We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
G'day, Brandon Clift here, and welcome back to the Mankind Podcast for this part 2 of my discussion with Dene Maria Sebastiana on his book, Fierce and Tender, Healing the Deep Masculine. Enjoy. Dene, welcome back.
Thank you, Brandon. Good to be here again.
Great to have you. So for those that joined us for the last interview, the first part of this 2-ep series I'm going to do with Dene about his book, Fierce and Tender. Dene shared with us his story about growing up on the mean streets in New York and his affiliation with gangs and the challenges that he faced in his home life in relation to his father, his grandfather, and basically the messages that he received as a young boy up until young adulthood of what it meant to be a man. And by the end of that interview, we started to move towards kind of the awareness and the awakenings that you were getting, Dene, as you started doing Jungian analysis, started playing around with some psychedelics as we got into the 60s and 70s, and shared, how you ended up meeting your now wife after having gone through your journey of celibacy and, trying to finally see what it means to make love with a woman for the first time. So we decided to make this a 2-parter just because there was so much there to dive into. And I kind of want to kick things off now talking about something that you mentioned in the book. And I'll read the quote. The great danger in the demonizing of men is that it misses 2 essential elements of the modern masculine. First, that men have been culturally programmed over thousands of years with qualities of toughness, strength, success, tenacity, fierceness, control, protection, provision, along with the messages of no pain, no weakness, no emotions, no tears, just get the job done. Before we get to the second element, I want to kind of dive in a little deeper on that first part, which seems to be what I understand as the old mold, or what I'd like to call the old mold of modern manhood, which is man box, right? Paul Kivel, Tony Porter talk about the man box. Don't be weak. Don't be a girl. Don't be gay. Don't be a sissy. Be a man. Take control. Be assertive. Be dominant. Right? These scripts we get from kindergarten. So how does that relate so much to the demonizing of men, especially as we see it today in 2022?
Well, because we've been programmed to do those things, and the upside of that is we're very capable and very efficient, and we build great machines. The technology is over the top in its marvel. So we're just following the program, and you look at the world, you can see that we've built technology to do great things, yet we still use it to build arms and weapons. We use it to exploit the earth and bring the great Gaia mother to her knees. The man box is still very much in effect. The messages that we've been given since even before 5, I think, in the crib, they put in trucks into our crib. My father put in a baseball glove and a baseball. We're programmed real early on to be those descriptors. So it's not surprising that we are following the program that we've been given for the last 6,000 years. And because it's been unbridled, that energy, that creative masculine energy has been unbridled, I believe, because we're not connected to our feeling side and our hearts we've gone over the top. We're at the brink of self-destruction. We've annihilated how many thousands of species already, and we're pretty close to the top of that list. So unless men begin to pay attention to that feeling body and pay attention to the emotions that get trapped, the vulnerable emotions that get trapped underneath the mandate of the man box, which is shame and fear, we don't get to express that very well. Mm-hmm. I think to our detriment, because we swallow our pain. And we've continued to do that for a very long time. And our culture is at a tipping point, and men's well-being is at a tipping point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you say in the book, we stand at this current crossroads simply because the dark side of the masculine has dominated for too long, bringing us to the edge of our own destruction. The old warrior way of doing things it really is. Well, look, I think we can attribute much of getting here to the old way, like the Industrial Revolution, a lot of the inventions that we get to, inventions of medicines and all the rest. Like there's a lot that we can say. And of course, many female figures, again, if we're talking strictly masculinity, right? There is a lot that has gotten us here. It just seems like we're outgrowing the skin. Like the suit doesn't fit anymore. Yes. And I think that's what's happening with the tensions that are arising and the conversations and debates around masculinity and manhood, why it's really coming to the surface, because it almost seems like the form of masculinity as we known it is transforming, yet there is naturally resistance to that from those that perhaps are far more comfortable in the mold of take it on the chin, tablespoon of cement, harden the F up, get shit done, breadwinner, be the man, your woman should know her place, right? I mean, at the risk of being binary, because I know there's more nuance to all of those, but
yes.
So it's gotten us here. So how can we go, thank you for getting us here, perhaps not for everything, but certain things, and then go, now let's transition to something that perhaps is a bit more, whatever synonym for like renewal, or the checks and balances,
rebirth,
like a rebirth, sure. But with 7.5 billion on the planet, how do we facilitate such a change?
Is that your question? How do we go about doing this?
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I'd love your thoughts, because I certainly don't have the answer to that one.
Well, I posit the notion that until men take a look deep inside them and realize that the program that they have been given and they're living has become detrimental. It's become detrimental to the earth. It's become detrimental to women. It's become detrimental to our climate. And sure as shit, it's become detrimental to our health. Yeah. You look at men's health issues and our numbers are through the roof.
That is true.
And it's my belief that it is that way because within this program, we've been imprinted to stay away from the softer side of our nature.
Right. So the softer side, of course, we've covered in ad nauseum on this show about the importance of men accessing their feeling side, but on a more practical level, it's I have this lump on my testicle, I am going to go get that looked out, versus don't be a sissy and just forget about it and move forward, move on, forward motion, right? Oh, I'm starting to get this recurring cough and pain in my chest. Take it on the chin, be a man, go get it checked. Like, it just doesn't seem natural I'm the same way. I come to America and it seems like, and again, screw it. I'll take the risk. Bunch of pill poppers. Yes. It's such a low hanging fruit to be like, yeah, there's a pill for that. Sure. Side effects include explosive diarrhea, gangrene, like I mean, but I
It
have a
takes
headache.
20 minutes to read the disclaimers.
Yeah, bingo, right? And so that, I think we also have the same thing as men of like, okay, well, the masculine pill for that is to forget about it, right? I witnessed it in my buddies at school. I wasn't much of a rugby player, but, you know, I witnessed a buddy of mine get a full-on concussion. Coach wanted to take him off. His dad came down, yelled at the coach, said to his son, "Don't be a pussy. Get back out there."
That's it.
Ended up in hospital, brain bleed.
Yep.
You went out and kept playing, ended up in hospital.
Yep.
Like just that continual message that it is okay for us to sacrifice our well-being and health as men to tick the boxes and get the job done, whether that's at work, whether that's in relationship, whether that's for our health. Just get it done. Don't complain about it. Take it on the chin, move on.
Not only that, but I recall in the beginning of President Trump's term, he talked about being in the locker room or groping women and got away with it. Somehow the nobility of the presidency, when the president comes out and says something like that, and what shocked me was not like men didn't react, women didn't react. We let men continue to act like boys. And it continues to damage us across the board. And no one calls men out on this shit.
Well, I think there's, I would disagree, Dene. I think a lot of people are getting called out. They're not getting called in. Because when I get called out, my amygdala kicks in, my fear response kicks in. I'm either going to bite down on my mouth guard and double down, keep swinging, or I'm going to retreat, shut down. Whereas, and Tony Porter talks about this from A Call to Men, is that we've got to invite men into conversations before we persecute them. We've got to give them the opportunity to look at it and to identify like, hey, this may not have been your intention, and that's cool. But you can't just rest your laurels on intention alone. It wasn't my intention to hurt you. Cool. But am I willing to accept the responsibility for the direct or indirect impact of what I did or said? I mean, I had this conversation in my men's group of, we were talking about ways that we have been explicit or complicit in racism, sexism, various other isms. And it was very challenging for some of the men in the group, including as it was for me once upon a time, to even acknowledge the ways that I was complicit with sexism, complicit with sexual harassment, complicit with racism.
Yes.
But because there were other white straight dudes like me and men of difference that were able to invite me into the conversation, I felt like it was fertile soil to do some work and grow, because I don't want to hurt people, Dene. I'm fully capable of it. Little offhanded comment at the bar with mates. You know, you just don't know the impact it's going to have. So I think that people are getting called out a bunch, but are they necessarily getting called in?
So describe the difference. What do you mean called in?
So for my current understanding is that, I can give you an example. Family gathering, friends, family, all the like, about 20 of us around a table. And, we were talking about a member of the family who wasn't there. Someone said that they were behaving like, the word that starts with R, that's commonly associated with those with mental disabilities. Let's just say that. Okay. Cool. I played it safe around that one. And in that moment, I felt it in my body. I felt it. It triggered all these experiences with family members with mental illness and all the rest. And it's almost in that moment, I had like two choices: call her out in that moment and make a scene, or what I did, which I'm proud of myself because I usually sometimes avoid these situations as a whole because I don't like conflict, is I just put my hand on her back and leant over and just whispered in her ear, like, you didn't need to say that. And her response was, oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I didn't need to say that. So there's death by 1,000 cuts, right? Comments like that could be death by 1,000 cuts. But to me, that's kind of like healing by 1,000 Band-Aids. That's just hey, you didn't need to say that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's an example for me of calling someone in versus making a scene and throwing knives.
It's a great idea, and I totally hear what you're saying. I'm concerned that we're just running out of time, that we don't have the luxury of waiting for each human heart to look at itself and to become self-aware in that moment. We've talked about for years in MKP, we awaken one man at a time. And my concern is that it's not fast enough.
Yeah.
How do we get men to turn towards themselves? I sat on an open circle on Zoom yesterday, men that have been meeting. And, when I posed the question to them of what broke your heart, 3/4 of all men didn't really have a response to that question.
They hadn't dug down yet.
Yeah. And they were sitting in a men's circle for quite a while. So, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to accelerate the capacity of men's awakening. I do not know how to do that, other than writing about it, putting it out there in the media. More people get exposed. More people say, hey, you know what? I should be going to the doctor. My numbers are high. When does a man awaken that he is hurting and his actions are impacting other people in ways that he cannot even imagine? How do we get more men to awaken to this? That's always been the question that I've asked.
Yeah. And I think it's insightful and amazing to see someone like yourself who has sat in thousands of circles at this point, 100+ new warrior trainings and been a part of this organization since the 80s. So you've witnessed the transformation. You've seen it happen on, 70,000 men. That's no small figure, right? Nope. Around the world, but still a microcosm in the grand scheme of things.
It's small.
It is small. So there naturally seems to be enough resistance that the work that we're doing on isn't being more widely adopted. However, I personally believe of all times in history, 2022, there has never been more of an opportunity, or the soil has never been more fertile to invite men into these conversations.
Yes.
And women and non-binary folk to be able to go,
yes.
Hey,
yes.
Guess what? Do you love the men in your life enough to hold them to a higher standard, whatever that higher standard is? And I'm not the person who determines what that is, but if you've noticed that they may be behaving from a place of hurt versus from a clean, clear place of self-awareness, then perhaps that's not their greatest operating system. Perhaps there's something else driving the bus, a bit more shadowy, let's say, than who they really are at their core. Because Dan and I have these conversations all the time with men. This work has been able to give me these tools, and having men like yourself on the show talk about things like sexism, racism, all the isms and the challenges that we're facing as a society right now, to be able to sit in conversations with people that are diametrically opposed, it seems, on just about everything, identify that they actually relate on more things than they don't. Number one, that what they're choosing to disagree with is really, if we're looking at a Venn diagram, two circles crossing one another, what they choose to disagree on is way out on the outside of those spheres or circles, fringe as it is called, right? Repeatedly in media. And I take it back to Dr. Niobe Way. We had her on the show early in this podcast of her book, The Connection Crisis. So I don't have a fast and true solution outside of we've got to get more connected. Like you look at movies like Disney movie about football. Denzel Washington is the coach. it's about segregated schools, right? The schools are no longer segregated. The football team comes together. Oh, this is killing me. Best soundtrack.
Training Day?
No, not Training Day. Yeah, not a Disney movie. Training Day.
Not a Disney movie.
Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans.
Yep.
What a fantastic example of the power of connection. Now, that's based on a true story too. That these, at a time in the early 70s when there wasn't a hotter debate going on than the debates around race and segregation, that these people, these young boys, really, in the grand scheme of things, young boys of difference came together, was able to move past so much of that and get on the same team with a common vision and a common goal. And to me, that all comes back to connection.
Yes. So how do we encourage that in places like Iowa or Kentucky or upstate New York, or places that are more conservative? How do we open the doorway? How do we invite men? How do we call men out or call men in? How do we get men to come into circles? 70,000 is an appreciable number, but we've been here for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
What does that amount to? 2,000 men a year? You know, for many years, George and I have been saying we want 1 million men to come through our turnstiles. And I'm, you know, and I do put a piece in the book, Brandon, about astrology, which is not a particularly welcomed topic. I think it's misunderstood greatly.
Yeah, sure.
But there's a great cycle of planetary movement that we're not aware of at all. And the Piscean age, which has been about religion and suffering and control and sense of limitation, is beginning to dissipate. And the values of the Aquarian age of brotherhood, sisterhood, oneness are beginning to grow. And we're like two ships passing in the night. One is in diminishing, one is in ascending. We're in that crossroad. And it's going to be a while, because we do not know the end of one age and the beginning of the next age. We're in that crossover space. I wonder if it'll be, you know, when Aquarius accelerates its presence on the planet, maybe then there will be more men and women awakening to our essential oneness. That's my hope.
See, and if I can, you know, be honest and open, Dene, and this may reflect some of the feelings of certain folks that listen to the show or live in perhaps those more conservative areas, that my mind doesn't instantly go to astrology and I mean, stuff that always interests me. I find that stuff very intriguing. Perhaps it's a more masculine mindset of like actions, like let's 12-point plan, let's blah blah blah, you know, that stuff loses me a touch.
Yes, I got that.
So
and my second book is Tools for Men. Practical tools for men. The first one was a story. The second one is practical tools for men. How to help men come into a circle, how to help men become more self-aware, how to help men learn how to field the essential questions of who I am and why I'm here, help men learn emotional literacy, tools for men to awaken. That's what I think is the next challenge for me, is to be able to put something out there in practical terms.
Well, and so now you've got my attention, because if you came down into my basement and saw my workshop, you see a lot of tools. And I like the idea of tools. And perhaps as a man, I like the idea of fixing things for better or for worse.
It's good.
Just going to make the claim DeWalt makes the.
But will we awaken to the fact that we need to fix ourselves?
Yeah, well, no, see, that's the first point. I think this is a good segue into, you know, the first kind of element of the modern masculine we spoke about was the doer, tough, strength, tenacious, fierce, control, protection, provision. Those themselves, objectively, they're neither right or wrong, positive or negative, right? However, it's been the lowest hanging fruit, right, for what we've been raised to understand as masculine. But then the second side that is often not acknowledged, given enough credence or credit, is that we as men are also have access to feminine energy of being a builder, creator, tender of gardens, producers of food, inventors, risk takers, poets, writers, scientists, entrepreneurs, athletes, and lovers. There is more to this than just the get shit done warrior mode. Far more to this. And I think that's where the work for me truly began, when my masculine was just like, dude, give me a break. It was tired. And there was this other side of me that was wanting to come out, but didn't have the tools to be given breath and come out. And I can tell you right now, when I was able to finally, I've not arrived, but as I have developed a greater relationship with my feminine, the colors in the world are brighter. The smells have more. There's more to it, the
juicier,
touch, the taste, the sex.
Everything is juicier.
Oh yeah, especially the sex. Hey, what's up, Christine? No. But it is, it's and that's not. I think where people get totally misconstrued around the feminine is that it's weak. That's right. Femininity equals weakness, but what
in men?
In men. Mm-hmm. Yep, and masculinity in women
they're bitches.
They're bitches, exactly.
So there's very little crossover.
Yeah,
men accessing the feminine energies, not female, feminine energies of compassion, kindness, tenderness, nurturance. Men crossing over. And again, I keep saying it's a function of the heart opening.
Yeah.
We have not been programmed or encouraged to speak from our hearts.
Yeah.
We have not been encouraged to speak from our feeling nature. We stay tough and hard. We ignore our health issues. We ignore the damage in our relationships. We ignore, the things that are happening on the planet. Imagine Putin having a heart awakening. Would a man that has a heart and caring march off to war like that?
Where in your life are you standing at a crossroads? What is the resistance that's holding you back? There is a circle of brothers waiting to meet you and stand with you in facing your next step. That is what the online Crossroads course from the Mankind Project USA is about. Facing your resistance and stepping into your brilliance. See the show notes for details.
Who knows?
How do we create that level of change?
Yeah.
That the men who are running the governments and the military and the corporations, and they're very different cultures. I acknowledge that they're very different cultures. Mm-hmm. But the consistent behavior seems to be men being violent. You look at most of the films that are out there, it's men being violent in some way.
Yeah.
And it continues to get applauded because it's exciting. It gets the testosterone pumping and the adrenaline pumping.
Yeah.
And it's better than sitting and watching the film called Couples Therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
What program would most men turn on? Couples Therapy or
Die Hard?
Die Hard. Yeah.
Why not both?
Why not both?
I love Die Hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love rom-coms.
Hardness is necessary and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
When it's used and applied with the appropriate amount of concern and care.
Yeah.
I celebrate all the old warrior sides of the masculine. What I'm saying is, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Just begin to complement it with an expanded feeling function, so the things that we do have more heart and care in them.
Yeah.
So instead of making a decision to wipe out 10 million acres in the Amazon jungle because it'll increase the share money in my shareholders, there's a man with an open heart. Can he take a breath and say, well, wait a second here. What's the impact on the species? What's the impact on the planet? I think that's where the masculine has gone astray. It doesn't have a bridle. It doesn't have a balancing element to it. Because we haven't been programmed to let ourselves feel the tender side of our nature. No blame. No blame. It's just the way it is. And I think we're running out of time, and we need to wake up. Make a different set of choices on a global scale.
And previously, when I was given that call to action, or I felt that call to arms, right? There you go. There's a distinction. Call to arms. As I got clear around this work, I felt like I had to become a warrior for this work. I had to be more aggressive in my approach to connect with men and get them involved in this work. And fuck, did it take me down a dark path. It was totally driven by shadow, not by my heart.
Yes.
And see, here's the challenge. Let's say we're running out of time and we want to create this change, or give men access, or give them the tools from a young age to understand what it means to access their heart, make decisions from that place, and that it's okay. I fear a passive approach for that. I fear a passive approach. Oh, it'll happen through due time, and I trust in the process. Where this other side of me, this warrior side, goes, I'm going to pad the pavement, knock on doors, go to my, every school board, superintendents, have these conversations, but perhaps at what cost? So the only thing it comes back to for me, and this in no way is me abdicating the mission for the world I want to see for men and everyone else in it, but is to just keep doing my work, and hopefully what I model to my kids and model to others
your
around
community,
me,
your community.
Yeah. Let those ripples talk. I mean, 70,000 men, let's just say, in the Mankind Project. Sure. But the ripples that each of those men have created, good or bad, how far reaching that is.
I sure pray that that's true.
Talking about what we're modeling for the next generation, fatherhood, Dene. Let's go back into your story, mate. So you had kids a bit later than most.
Yes. I was 46 and 48 when Dakota and Dylan were born, respectively.
Did you feel
and I'm glad that I'm waited, because in my 20s, I was with two different women. Each of them wanted to marry. And I walked away from both of those opportunities because I knew I was way too damaged to be a good father. And I waited until the right one came along. And after men's work, once I was initiated in 88, Dakota was born in 94, Dylan in 95. So I'd been in men's work for quite a while now, and learned enough about myself and about my own masculine nature and the shadow side of it to be a very different father in my 40s than I was in my 20s.
Right.
And you as a young man, you're what? 28, 25, 30?
29 with one on the way.
29, one on the way. Good. Because you have been in the work, because you have awakened to your feeling function, because you see the impact with greater awareness and clarity, you'll be a very different husband and father than I would have been in my 20s.
So here's my fear, Dene, and this is what I think about when I'm in bed. I hear all the time, because of the work I've done, and the awareness, and mate, I've got a command of semantics, so I can use the language and I can, dazzle with my awareness around this stuff, especially around fatherhood and parenthood. I have people coming up to me going, "You're going to be the best dad. You're going to be the greatest dad. The fact that you're emotional and you love kids and blah, blah." but I'm afraid that they're also speaking to a part of me that's kind of arrogant. That's like, oh, I got my shit together for this. I do men's work. I've got a men's group supporting me. I'm going to fucking rock fatherhood. And it's two sides. It's like, yes, sign me up, can't wait. And the other side is, what if with all these tools and all the support around me, I fuck it up?
Well, what if you wound your kids?
Yes. And you make this clear in the book that,
We can't not.
yeah. And your two boys ended up going on their own journeys that,
Yes.
were very challenging, right?
And I've come to believe, and I write this in the book, that the wound is the gift that the soul offers. That going down, going in, grappling with the darkness inside each human psyche, and trying really hard to become conscious. There's so much more of us that's unconscious than conscious. And it's impossible for a parent to be attentive to its child's needs. There's so much of a demand on a child, particularly in the younger years, to ask for and demand everything that they need. And it's impossible for a parent, let alone two parents in a household. There's so many single parent households these days, to attend to that child's needs. Sooner or later, we're going to turn our back. We're going to say the wrong thing. We're going to run out of patience. We're going to bark. We're going to bitch. We're going to hit. We're going to do whatever we do. Every human being gets a wound. I think it's, preordained that way, that the soul comes in with that mandate that soul is going to take on a wound. And, in our work, we kind of put together the possibility that a wound brought into consciousness may begin to inform a mission and a purpose in a life.
Yeah.
I've learned to not, turn my back on and judge the wound as a bad thing. I call it a wound as an essential thing. It gives the being that receives that wound something to consolidate energy around in this whole healing process. So your arrogance may suffer the illusion that you've got your shit together and you're in men's work and you can handle this. And that's okay. And then one day you wake up and you realize the damage you've done. It's inevitable. It's not a bad thing. It just comes with the territory, and they need that. It's part of, Earth School.
Earth School. You were coaching me. A lot of my life, I had done most of my work around my dad with men's work and that context, and he himself being a new warrior. And in this work since I was 9, I did what felt like 4 or 5 years of kind of bucketing and digging to my relationship with my father, which I learned was way more about me than it was about him. And you were the first one to be like, let's talk about your mother. And I was like, what are you talking about? Mom's great. She's, perfect. And boy, did that reveal a lot of things. But you said something in one of those sessions was that a parent's job is to wound their kids. Otherwise, you end up with kids with this disjointed deifying of their parents, that their parents are the arbiters of right and wrong, male, female, right? That's how so many of us end up dating someone that's just like one of our parents, and inevitably it doesn't work, right? I want to ask you, Dene, with your early exposure to men's work and becoming a parent at an older age, what was your mindset or your feeling space going into parenthood? And I'd love to tie the line between that and questions you may have been asking yourself when your boys went through some pretty significant struggles in adulthood.
When Mignon and I first came together, I was 40, she was 30. And of course, once we established that we were here and we were connected, the question of whether we want to have children or not, she was very willing and very ready. I mean, she was at the peak of her feminine powers. I had resisted the temptation and was quite comfortable with the notion that I may not have children. She was much more into it than I was. I had been in the work and I had seen my own healing process, but I knew there was still damage inside me. I didn't realize until on the other side of it that, you know, that was part of the process of our marriage and rearing children, is that a parent has a great opportunity to work out their own issues in marriage and in parenthood. I get to see in my up close and intimate relationships my light side and my shadow side more effectively and clearly than anywhere else in my life. And the beauty and the good fortune of my marriage is right from the beginning. I just came off a Warrior Weekend. She just came off an advanced class in LifeSpring. We were both into the work and awakening ourselves. And we came together, and that was the first contract that we signed, is that we're here to do our work. It was not about, she was so beautiful, I couldn't resist her. It was not about falling in love or being sexually so attractive. It was about something in her magnetic center, and my magnetic center began to vibrate in a similar frequency. So we have gone through an incredible amount of pain and suffering, but what has kept us together and what is the thread that's kept our family unit in good relationship is we turn towards the work. We turn towards our distortion. We turn towards our pain. We turn towards our projection. We turn towards the damage that we do, and we take responsibility, and we express ourselves with vulnerability and transparency whenever there's a conflict. We know that the tools that we need to use are vulnerability, this is what I'm feeling, and transparency, this is what I've done. We made that agreement real early on, and thank God we've been able to deploy that. And even though our sons have gone through their own journey, and they still are on their own journey, there's a great awareness in both of them. Mm. And that's as much as we could have done, is, you know, bring a child into the world that's got heart, that's got care, that has a sense of truth and honesty and integrity, that has a heart. That was our intention, to help our children through to get to that place. And thank God they have.
A lot of that has landed for me. And what first thing was that your children are just a mirror, whether you like it or not. They're giving you if they're giving you the shits, you taught them that. And what also came alive for me is that it seems like you had the awareness, at least, to go, we're going to give these kids access to their hearts, and the rest is really up to them.
That's right.
Because I have found myself, especially as I've connected with older men in this work, you know, you might meet a bloke who's done 100 new warrior trainings, full leader, and then you get insights that their home life is a mess. Or their relationships are a mess. And I go, wait a second, shouldn't this person have all these boxes and blah, 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 and things tick together? And what it does to remind me is that no one does. You can still turn up and shine in so many areas of life, even if things aren't working. And for you to have the awareness to go, even when your boys were struggling and going through their path, as we've all struggled, right? We've all touched the stove many times, but for you to go, it's their journey, that's their path, and you did what you needed to do, and you're going to turn up the way that you choose to, right? As a parent, yeah, it's so much for me. And
so, how are you feeling about your first child coming on? You do you lay awake at night thinking all kinds of thoughts about this being that's chosen to come into you guys? What incredible responsibility it is.
Yeah.
It's heavy, isn't it?
Yeah. There's fuck. I think there's a part of my ego that wants to keep the status quo and doesn't want to change. Like sometimes I find myself going, well, will I have to change these things that I enjoy because of this kid coming into the world? And then on the other side, it's like, yes, this is the death and rebirth. This is the hero's journey of this. And so it's like I don't know, it's like so much at once. But a mate of mine who's both his 3 kids are out of the nest now said, cross the river when you get there. Yeah. Don't future trip this stuff. Don't try and eat the whole elephant, just day at a time. And then that relates well to what you've taught me, is that, you're going to wound your kids. Don't try and avoid it. Don't try and be perfect. Don't end up this deified thing to them. Otherwise, you'll really fuck them up.
So what if we have children in order for us to grow and evolve and change?
Yeah.
What if we have them for our own selfish reasons?
In the context of good selfish, as in?
Good selfish, aware of our limitations, aware of our shadow patterns. Because, when a child comes in and starts doing what a child does, particularly an infant child, which is scream and cry, has no language, it gets very challenging to be able to attend to that energy without losing your shit. And it exposes all of our flaws, particularly in our marriage. It exposes all of our flaws because mom wants to do it one way, dad wants to do it another way. If they don't have good communication skills and find the both and in their dance, in their relationship, it'll do even more damage to the child. It's a learning opportunity like no other, marriage and parenthood.
Oh, fuck. Oh, yes. The closer we get, the more I'm like putting in my mouth guard, like getting ready. Cause I can find myself spiraling and going through my own, closing all these loops and having these questions come up in my head of, well, here's how I want to raise a kid. And then I've done the full gambit of that. And I present it to Christine as if, well, this is what I want. No ifs, ands, or buts, forgetting that there's you, there's me, but really there's us. And when it comes to this child, when it comes to the kid and our parenting, this is an us thing, it seems.
And just remember, there is no instruction booklet that comes tied to their toes. And even though they write books on child rearing, and they're wonderful books, it's an experiment.
Yeah.
And everyone is different. And every child that we have is different. It's a beautiful learning. Yeah. If what I found, if I bring enough heart, care, and humility and trust and ability to say, wow, I made a mistake. Wow, I keep making the same mistake. I'm sorry. And recognize the impact of my behavior, particularly my shadows, realize the impact of what I do to others. That's how I learn. And that's what's beautiful about the container of marriage, the container of parenthood, and the container in a men's circle. It's a contained space in which we see ourselves reflected off and through other people. And we get feedback that says, wow, this is a beautiful part of you, Dene, that's coming out. And this part comes out kind of defensive and kind of aggressive. I get to look at myself through all of these containers, and I call them initiation. The opportunity to go down out of our comfort zone, through an ordeal, and take away and integration from that experience. It's a continual process.
Here we go, mate. Parenthood, woohoo!
When are you expecting?
The unexpected.
When are you expecting?
Oh, he said, what are you expecting? No, November 15th, Scorpio.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We have enough Scorpios in our family. No, there's room for one more. There's room for one more, of course. But no, thank you, Dene. And the essence of that whole conversation around parenthood, I've got it, is I hope that Christine and I can do the best work we can to give that kid access to their heart and access to their ferocity, and all that good stuff as well.
Yes.
So, beautiful. Well, Dene.
So put in one more pitch for my book, Fierce and Tender, the Healing the Deep Masculine. It's on Amazon. It's a beautiful story. It's a great read. And there are, all of my life lessons for whatever they're worth.
Absolutely. And for those listening as well, the book has been great because of the way the chapters you've broken down, Dene. If you're experiencing something as it pertains to your parenthood, the chapter on your parenthood, it's like, great, flip there. It really is. It really does do well to segment these different stages of your life. And excited for the next one, the tools for men. That's going to be handy to get hands on some tools and swing them, as we like to do, right? So, all righty. Well, thank you, Dene.
Thank you, brother.
And thank you for all of you that have joined us again for another episode of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there is more than one way to be a man. What do you say, Dene? Have we done that today?
Yahoo.
Hey, aho. Thank you so much, brother. And thank you to all of you listening that join us each week. We will see you next week. Lots of love. Well, there you have it, another powerful episode of the Mankind Podcast, a two-parter with Dene Maria Sebastiana. We keep bringing him back because you guys keep asking to bring him back. Out of all of our guests, he has received the most fanfare, you could say, from all of you emailing me, just sharing your thoughts and feelings about what he has shared in previous episodes. And I believe it's likely going to happen again because the dude's a badass. I love having him on the show. You guys clearly love hearing from him. So if you want to have your feelings and your thoughts and your opinions and feedback shared, please, you can email me at brandon@brandoncliff.com. And if you'd like to find out more about Dene, his coaching practice can be found through sunmooncoaching.com. And if you want to find out more about his book and get your hands on a paper copy or put it on your Kindle, you can find Fierce and Tender, Healing the Deep Masculine on Amazon. Again, all of the above will be linked in the show notes. Just want to take this moment for just a personal thank you to all of you that have reached out and shared your love and support for me with my, I call it impending parenthood, but that doesn't necessarily put it in a positive lens. But we've been baby-proof in this place and doing all the things and starting to read the books. And I tell you what, it's, I got the jitters, but more than anything, I've just got so much support and love from all of you who have shared with me frequently that parenthood is one of the greatest gifts that life can, throw at someone. And I certainly am so grateful to have Christine, my fiance, with me on this journey, and for our child, our little human, which currently is just like, I think the size right now of a zucchini, we've been told, which I promptly responded with, "That's my boy," but who knows? We don't even know. We're not going to find out the sex till we have the kid. Anywho, I won't ramble any longer. This has been a long series. I just wanted all of you to know, thank you for the love. Thank you for the support. I really do appreciate all you parents out there just helping me prepare mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. All the best, lots of love, and we will see you next week. This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Paul Newell, Boyson Hodgson, and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests, for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guest and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, we've got to give special thanks to our back-end team, producer, editor, and audio ninja for the show, Michael J. Russer, and Don Huff, who takes care of our graphics and promotions and pretty much makes us look pretty. So, of course, thank you, Don. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. What it means for Paul, what it means for Boyson, that is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.